Hello and welcome to the 67th episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends, even when you're losing. I'm Kellen, your host for today's episode, and joining me, as always, is Mark and Neelan.
Hey. Hello.
A public service announcement for everyone out there today.
I like how we're doing these every episode now.
And you're not, you have to do the...
Oh, yeah, no, that didn't work. We're not doing that ever again.
All right.
Neelan has changed out the Coca-Cola in his fridge to the caffeine-free variety.
That's right.
Caffeine-free, sugar-free.
Yep.
It's basically like caramel-colored water.
It's mostly just brown colorant and fizzy water.
So if you were expecting Pep and Zep?
Pep and Zep.
Pep and Zep in my step,
Those are my favorite Marx Brothers.
you're not going to get it anymore because who the knows what's in this Diet Coke, Neelan? And scene.
Pause for sipping Diet Coke.
Refreshing.
This segment's sponsored now.
Yeah.
On today's episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast, we're going to be talking about the games that we have played this week. We're going to be talking about our featured topic, which is specific games that have recently left our collections. We are the hype boys, but sometimes we got to give it to you straight.
Wait, okay. I forgot we were the hype boys.
Yeah, it's like the Pep boys.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The
Anyway.
Zep boys.
Pep and Zep,
I
the hype
could've
boys.
I'm hype. One of you is Pep, the other one is Zep.
Pep, Zep,
I think
and hype,
Neil
yeah.
is the Zep, because I think it's like the whole like non-American Zep.
Zed.
Probably,
The Zed, yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
And we are bringing back a classic favorite from the archives, which is things that we're looking forward to in the board gaming world, whether it be a Kickstarter, whether it be a convention, whether it be something we read this week in the world of board gaming. If you want to talk to us about our Pep, about our Zep, about anything at all, you can join us at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. There are many of you there. And there's starting to be people who are joining that are arguing more with me, which I'm unsure about. But maybe that's, I don't know.
Speaking of Mark of the Beast, that's one of the signs of the apocalypse, I'm pretty sure.
All right, that is enough up front. Let us talk about the games we have played. Mark, we are starting with you. What have you been playing, sir?
I played the latest expansion for Space Base, which is called Space Base, The Emergence of Shy Pluto. What an evocative name that is. An interesting, I say interesting in quotes, thing that it does is it sort of parcels out the expansion in a campaign form. So you are encouraged to play, I think it totals 12 missions, and each of them unlocking a further part of the what will become the entire expansion. There are cards a la Pandemic Legacy that are revealed as you get to later chapters. There are mystery boxes to open once you unlock them. We started out with full intentions to play this campaign mode the way that God intended.
Is it a legacy game?
It is not a legacy game. It's a campaign game.
This is a campaign game for the Machikoro replacement Space Base?
Yes. Right. The thematically rich, immersive...
Got it.
They saw the Machikoro legacy and were like, we need to get in on that.
Oh, that's true.
That is an actual
They are
thing.
competing.
Is that actually happening?
Oh, yeah. Machikoro legacy is an actual
Rob
thing. that's
Davio's
actually
working
happening.
on
Oh, is
bro.
it? Okay, all right. Well,
Yeah.
then you know it's going to happen. So, yes, we fully intended to do this, playing 10 games and getting through the entire thing and unlocking it piecemeal. And then we realized that while Space Base is a good game, it's definitely a Machikoro killer to me and a game that I genuinely like and I've played multiple times. I'm not going to read a story about unlocking like these little boxes to get one expansion. I mean, and the box itself, the expansion box itself, is tiny and appropriately so. I don't need a huge box, but there's not much to the expansion. And spoiler, the expansion is fine. It's good. I'm happy with it.
But Mark, is Pluto still shy by the end of the
right.
story?
And has he emerged?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you read the end?
I'll leave it to the... No, I don't want to spoil it. It's such a thematic, rich experience. I mean, Avengers Endgame, and then follow it up with Emergence of Shy Pluto, and you have yourself a night.
So it's essentially like 60 card expansion-ish to Space Base that they divvied up into like 12 card chunks per game, except you're not a rule follower.
Well, that's right. I'm a rule breaker, not a rule taker. I guess a real quick spoiler alert here in case you want to go through all the chapters of Space Base, The Emergence of Shy Pluto. Neelan will put a tag, the time tag, and whatever to skip
I definitely will remember to do that.
But I'm just going to spoil it because we did not.
I've left the room.
Okay, yeah, right. We'll make sure to grab you when I'm finished. We decided, and honestly, I just encourage anybody who gets this, just go ahead and go through the entire thing. Like, one of the reasons they do it in this way is to like teach you the rules of the new types of cards that come out. But it's seriously like a 4-page manual for all intents and purposes. I would encourage everybody to just read the storyline. Don't worry about unwrapping things piecemeal. So what it introduces are new types of cards or types of effects. One is when this card is triggered, you get to roll a pair of dice just for yourself at that time. So when you activate the card, there's these like translucent dice that come in the expansion. You roll a pair of them and they're only good for you, following normal rules. Another type of new card is a card that has 2 arrows pointing to the cards to the left and right. So when these cards trigger, you get the bonuses from the card to the left of it and to the right of it.
Okay.
So the biggest part of the expansion introduces this Shy Pluto character. I believe he's the villain. Again, I didn't read the mythos well close enough to know. So now whenever a player rolls the common dice, they roll a third dice, which is this sort of monster dice. Okay. 4 of the faces are blank, 2 of the faces have his face on it. And if that face is rolled, then you roll these smaller dice, these mini dice, about a quarter the size of the regular dice. And those dice have 5 blank faces and then 1 other face that has something. And they range from income to gold to victory points. So whenever the monster head is rolled, then that person rolls all these mini dice. It's highly likely that nothing will come up because 5 of the 6 faces are blank. But whatever does come up, you can either contribute these spaceships, which is something that you can acquire with these new cards, to fight the monster thematically. And if you do contribute one of these spaceship chits, you get everything on the dice. Okay. But if you don't have any of these spaceship chits because you haven't acquired them, you lose everything on the dice.
Do all of these 3 modules feel like independent things that you would sort of... Would you be bothered to like say, oh, we're going to play with this module or this module, or would you just throw it all in?
That's a good question. My inclination playing it is that I would like to put them in sort of piecemeal. Like when I felt like playing one or the other, it feels like adding all of them might be a little too much. Okay. But it doesn't really lend itself to being taken out and put back in, because the cards themselves, as all space-based cards, are these really thin cards. There's no differentiation on the back, so you have to really go through them and recognize, oh, this is this type of card, this is this type. I think it'll play just fine with all these expansions, but it is sort of a weird commitment that you're making, it feels like.
So this is like becoming a pretty common approach. It's similar to what they did with the Rise of Fenris for Scythe. I had a similar reaction where, in that case, the campaign was interesting in and of itself, but none of the modules, they didn't feel like, oh, I'm going to play with all of these cool new modules now. Like, I would maybe play with one of them here and there. Right. And as a vehicle for unveiling that stuff, it just didn't seem like the most appropriate way to do that. And that kind of sounds like a similar thing here, where it's like, I agree with that. You can do a campaign and you can sort of add new modules to your game, but the idea of sort of forcing both of those elements together just feels incomplete.
It's exactly like a Coca-Cola freestyle machine. Instead of the geniuses who came up with Coca-Cola telling us what the best flavor is, they give that control back to the players.
Now we can all be geniuses.
And the problem is the players are not good at choosing which modules, which variants, and which things go in together. You should not put chocolate in your Mountain Dew.
Okay, so wait, let me just get...
No.
Alex, that's it.
No, don't unpack that.
Clear as day. Don't put chocolate in your Mountain Dew.
All right. Well then, that enough said. Don't put chocolate in your Mountain Dew. And that's what I feel about Space Base, the Emergence of Shy Pluto.
All right, Neelan, what have you been playing?
Okay, we played Hyperborea together. This was one I was really excited to play. It kind of been on our wish list for a little while, and then for whatever reason, got crazy cheap. If you're in the US, you can pick it up for $20 on Amazon right now, which is insane for a big box, very good strategy game. The way Hyperborea works is it is a bag building, civilization, area control, dudes on a map style game. So a bag builder, for those that don't know, is a game where you sort of acquire components and put them into a literal bag. And over the course of the game, you're choosing generally what components go into the bag, and your turn is typically starts by pulling some of those components out of the bag. That determines the actions you're going to be able to take on your turn. Typically work through your bag until you sort of used all the components up, acquire more to put in. So structurally, it's very similar to a deck builder.
It is a deck builder, except
it's practically a deck builder in a different form.
But you get to hold things in your hand.
Exactly, you get to run them through your fingers, which is one of the best parts of playing any board game.
But you don't have to sleeve it.
You don't have to sleeve them.
Can you sleeve cubes?
Well, you could. People do little plastic caps for like Orleans or like other bag builders.
Wait, but can you can't sleeve a cube.
I don't know. I would
cap a cube.
Laminate it.
Let me try. Yeah. You have a sort of hex grid that's sort of laid out through tiles. Some of those tiles in the center are face down as they're undiscovered. You have some dudes that start near your capital city, and you're going to be moving them across the map, exploring the map, fighting ghosts, invading other people's territory, getting resources. But the way this is all accomplished is through this bag building element, where you have 6 types of cubes of different colors. And each of those colors corresponds to sort of a different primary action. So green is movement, red is combat, blue are these technology cards, orange is about getting new cubes into your bag. And then you choose which of these cubes over the course of the game you're sort of going to be adding to your bag, so that when you pull them out in the style of a game, much like, say, Orleans, you're placing those cubes as you draw them onto little sets of colors. So, for example, a move action might be 2 green cubes, or a move in a fight might be a green and red action. So you're going to pick the action that you're going to place the cubes on, building towards completing that little row of colors. And once you've done that, you can perform the actions. So the game is about drawing cubes from your bag at the beginning of your turn and trying to figure out the best way to accomplish what you want to do with those colors, either by setting them on your board in order to build towards bigger turns in the future, or just utilizing them as best as you can for the current turn. So you don't have a fine degree of control over what you're able to do, but you sort of have a more long-term building your bag towards what you're aiming to do over the course of the game, whether that's more movement, more combat, more cubes, more technology, etc. So it ends up being a pretty interesting bag building Euro experience in the guise of like an area control dudes in the map game.
Is there any difference between a bag building mechanism and a deck builder?
So I believe it depends on how you implement the bag building. So a good example of this is the way Orleans works versus Altiplano, for example. Altiplano forces you to work through your entire bag before you sort of reset everything and then draw them all again. That's basically the same as a deck builder, right? Orleans actually works slightly differently to a deck builder in that you're not always guaranteed to go through your entire bag before you reset. So the Hyperborea works more like Altiplano, in which case it is technically a deck builder, but in bag form. Honestly, the only good reason for this not to be a deck builder is placing cubes on your board is more practical than sort of having cards.
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting things, is that this is a Euro game, but it looks like, you know, ye old thematic game. Like there's warriors, and you're like, wow, my board is awesome looking.
Right.
Like my dude is gonna like kill you. But what you're doing on your turn is very Euro efficiency puzzle. Like, how can I be most efficient and sort of progress on the board? And even the cover of the game is actually really cool artwork that I think may have been why this was received in the marketplace less than it could have been otherwise, because I really like it. But it's very specific.
Right. Actually, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of Scythe. But it reminds me of the argument you had about Scythe, which is like it presents itself as this sort of more aggressive war game, but it's very much a Euro game that sort of just pushes itself along those lines. And honestly, to me, that's a strength. It captures a lot of the feel of what I like about those sorts of games. Like you said, you have this map, you're definitely moving minions across them. It does feel like you're spreading out, attacking people here and there. But yeah, the whole game is, I have these cubes, how best can I use them? You know, you could look through your bag and see, okay, I have a couple of orange cubes, a couple of blue cubes. Am I actually going to be able to do the things I need to do this round before I reset everything? You can build yourself into corners where you're literally unable to play the cubes you have, and part of the game is obviously preventing that from happening. It's pretty interesting. Did you guys like it?
Yeah, I liked it. It has a lot of small touches that keep it very, very tight that I really appreciated. There are limited spaces on your board where you can place the cubes, as Neil sort of just alluded to. So despite the fact that the cubes are worth a victory point each at the end of the game, which makes you sort of inclined to rush adding a bunch of different cubes into your bag, if you do that too early, you find yourself with a bunch of turns where you, like Neil said, you don't have any space to place these cubes. So that's sort of an interesting take on it. There's also a mechanic where you draw 3 cubes a turn. If your final draw is less than 3 cubes, that is your draw. You don't get to, like in many deck builders, when you're at the end of the deck, if you need to draw more cards, you're generally told to shuffle your deck and draw up to whatever you need to draw to. In Hyperborea, if you only have one cube left in the bag, your turn is going to be a one cube turn. So there's just these things that add to the whole puzzle element where you've always got in your mind, I want multiples of 3. Whenever you acquire technology, you're forced to take a waste cube. So even though, it seems easy to, maintain that multiple of 3 bag when you're trying to build your engine by taking a technology and you're forced to take a waste cube, now you've got to find some way to acquire 2 cubes or discard 1 or something.
Right.
So,
and to the game's credit, it does have this really smart system where you have these development tracks where you can sort of bank for the times that you need them.
Right.
So I've accidentally taken 1 cube. I'm now outside of the multiples of 3. Now's the time to add a cube.
Yeah, it's never so stressful that you feel like you have to devote all your energy to it, but it's just something that you have to sort of keep in the back of your mind.
Right, exactly.
That I've got to get myself set up, which you can do if you devote any energy to it.
I will say that our first game of this wasn't perfect. There was some weirdness towards the way it ended. The way that the end conditions for the game work, there are 3 win conditions. One is getting victory points, one is getting technology cards, and one is getting all your miniatures onto the map. And in a regular game, once 2 different objectives have been completed, you have 1 more round and the game ends. It just sort of creates this weird sort of accelerated ending that doesn't always feel optimal to necessarily work towards, because you might be in a position to end the game, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be winning the game. So it's this weird double-edged sword of trying to time the end for the time when you think you're actually in the lead, which in our case led to a weirdly anticlimactic game, and I think would be one of the things that would be ironed out on subsequent plays, but that was certainly a gray area in our first play of it, for sure.
Yeah, I'll go over 2 things I really liked and one that left my head scratching a little bit. One of the things that I loved was how it did not feel offensive to have one of your units be killed. And a lot of dudes on a map game, you're making these big pushes, 7 units to your 5 units, and it's like, if I lose this battle, my game might be over. And because of the Euro nature of this, you're moving 1 unit or 2 units at most, and then you're killing someone. And that's almost like, oh yeah, of course he's going to do that. That's the most efficient thing for him to do. And that led to less internal pain, honestly, for having those units removed. It felt a lot less personal than some other dudes on a map games feel. And I thought that was a positive for this length, for this genre. This, threading that hybrid needle is so challenging in games like Lords of Hellas and games like Scythe. The dreaded S word. Another thing I really liked is, as opposed to upgrading your faction, you are just building towards cubes of a certain color. So in a game like Blood Rage, you're drafting cards that make up your racial abilities. In this game, if you want to be the guy that can move and attack all the time, you do that. Keep making red cubes, keep making green cubes. And that's just fun. It's fun to think about as you move through the early and mid game. And I really enjoyed thinking through that puzzle. With that said, my negative is that towards the end of the game, there might be 2 or 3 turns left and you see the writing on the wall, but you have 2 or 3 turns worth of cubes in your bag and you have lost a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do at that end of game. You want to scramble, you want to get out in control of all the territories, but you've set up your bed and all you've got left in that bag is blue cubes, which is helping you buy more technology cards. Great. And I don't think that that's necessarily a con of the game. I really want to play it more to kind of figure out if I can overcome my own ineptitude in that sense. But I do feel like it, once again, is an element of it being a Euro Ameritrashy hybrid, where in a normal game, it's like, okay, Mark and I are in the same hex. I kill Mark. Right. That's what I do. I kill Mark. But in this game, you cannot kill Mark because you have 3 turns where there's no possible way that you can kill Mark. And that's frustrating.
Yeah. And I think that can be made up, as you sort of alluded to, on multiple plays. You sort of can maybe tell, I need to make sure to keep a red cube in my bag, or I'll sacrifice points gained from cubes to keep a small set of cubes, and just increase the chances I get something that I need.
Right. In retrospect, it actually makes a lot of the technologies very interesting. There are some technologies that allow you to return cubes to your bag, so that might be the prime time to return a red cube to your bag, right? There are some technologies that will just enable you to take an action that other people might not have access to, like an extra move for your round. And some of that stuff becomes a lot more interesting on the second playthrough, for sure. I definitely felt pretty strongly that it's been a long time since I played a game where I felt the second game would be so substantially different from the first game. just by virtue of how much knowledge you then have of the systems.
Yeah, I wanted to play it again, but they said we had to record this podcast.
Also, it's for a 3-player dudes on a map game, it took us an hour and 15 minutes, which is very breezy. You know, it was the promise of games like Inish, which we didn't always deliver for us. And if that sort of carries through to subsequent plays of it, that seems like an awesome length for this type of game.
Agreed.
That is Hyperborea.
All right, the last game that we all played together. We started the night strong and then ended the night with Clockwork Wars. I tried to do like you kind of sometimes say. Clockwork Wars is a lesser-known game of area control, of hidden deployment, a la diplomacy. So everyone is writing down orders on their pads, and then those orders are being carried out simultaneously. And it's a game with a whole lot of screw you elements in the form of different cards and technologies that you can get. The premise of the game is that something has happened to the Earth because someone is half monkey, someone is half dog, someone is the purebreeds, the human purebreeds, and that was me. Thank you. And then there was, what was the other?
Rhinos.
Rhinox,
But were the rhinos half people?
No,
I don't
rhinos
think
are not.
they were just rhinos.
Well, they were like bipedal rhinos, so yeah presumably.
Maybe they were half people too.
And so it's also steampunk. So if that's feeling great to you guys. So Clockwork Wars is frequently on people's list of underrated gems online. So I have had this on my shelf of shame for longer than any board game ever. It's a huge box. I bought the extra minis. I got it all out. I learned all the rules. I set it all up. The map setup is variable, hexagons with different types of territories. The game is played over 7 rounds. After the 2 rounds, you score. After 4 rounds, you score. And then at the very end of the 7th round, you also score. The game is very smooth, but it is also very regimented. You go through a set list of processes where you are expanding out from where you start. You are getting into very punitive combat where, you know, if you have 5 units and they have 3 units, their units die, but you get 2 units left, so you lose 3 of your units on that square. Certain hexes are really good for giving you IPs, which help you buy technologies, which upgrade your civilization. Others are good at scoring victory points. Others help you recruit more units to the board. So the entire game, you're making choices between what do I want to focus on? Do I want to focus on the victory scoring points? Do I want to upgrade my civilization? Or do I want to really have board control? There's some couple other elements in the game, but there is also a espionage deck, which is a deck of 20 to 30 screw you cards that would not be out of place in Cosmic Encounter by any margin. I think I will just ask what you guys thought of Clockwork Wars, and we'll get back to me.
I really did like it. And I was disappointed that because I was hoping to. And after you'd explained the rules, I think there were a lot of things that were really interesting about it. I have not played diplomacy, so the idea of drafting out your rules on a sheet of paper, everyone doing that secretly and then revealing is an element I've liked in something similar like Forbidden Stars, for example. The reveal of what you're doing is always interesting to me. In practice, it adds this very horrible tension where you have these limited forces and you're trying to commit them somewhere, but you're trying to second guess what everyone's doing. And then you put them somewhere and they're like, oh, I could have done that a lot better, but I thought you were going to do this. And that's fun, sort of, on the reveal, but it also just feels suboptimal a lot of the time. And it leads to a lot of very disappointing moments where you could have just done things a lot better if you hadn't sort of maybe second guessed the way someone else was going to play. The espionage cards really frustrated me because they were pretty big swings in a game that, like you frequently said throughout, it was a pretty deterministic game. It's a game where, you know, you choose where your pieces are going, they go there, everything plays out according to this very set structure. Then someone plays an espionage card at a random time and your entire turn is ruined, or your entire plan up until that point is thwarted. That I found extremely aggravating.
Yeah, for example, you know, you are generating units each turn. If you have control of a city, that helps you generate 2 units. So I think the most anyone generated was around 10. And there is a card that says, for this round, your opponent doesn't generate units from their cities. So that could be 6, 8 units out of the 10 that they were planning on deploying in the last turn of the game that you can just hand them and go, oh, surprise, by the way, on the last turn of the game, you can't do this.
I was also disappointed by that first play, mainly because, well, one of the main reasons was that I was very much looking forward to it. I was very excited about it. It's also a game that I've had unplayed for quite a while, but seemed really interesting. There is a lot of hidden gem talk about it, so I was very excited to play it. I think for me, the biggest problem is what Neelan just talked about, are the espionage cards. I think if you take those out of the game, that raises it for me quite a bit.
I would agree.
Because I'm thinking about the game. I'm thinking about the game we just played. And what did I not like about that game aside from the espionage cards? It's hard to point to anything in that game that I don't like aside from the espionage cards.
I still think for me, the underlying tension of the visible deployment would be enough to... I mean, it was a little bit of a combination of both of those, to be fair, but I think the espionage cards were the biggest offender.
Yeah, and I loved the tension of the deployment. That was a big plus for me. So there are a number of technology cards that you can acquire, and you pick randomly. You pick one for every type at every level. And I felt like maybe some of the cards felt like there wasn't much reason to ever go for them. Like,
right. Some of them just felt substantially better.
Yeah, I felt like maybe if that was curated a little bit more, then that would make a more fun experience. Like that felt like a lacking segment of the game.
Almost like maybe if you designed like a set for each of them.
Right.
Okay, this is your set of 9.
This is the
Here's
8.
another set of 9.
Exactly. That I feel like that might be a better situation.
Interesting, yeah.
So that felt like a weakness, but everything else felt quite maybe not novel, because as you said, you see this in diplomacy. It's taking parts of games that but the way that they're combined in this game felt to me quite novel. So yeah, disappointed, but if there's some way, and you were mentioning there's a drafting variant for the espionage cards.
There is, that was promoted by the designer for people who weren't interested. I think it's such a harsh contrast between how deployment works and how deterministic and abstract that is versus the crazy chaos of the espionage cards.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because that is my chief complaint with the game, is actually not the espionage cards. It's that I love the hidden deployment. I love writing stuff down, but you start from your base and you're slowly plotting, you're moving your way out, and every battle is devastating. There are only 7 deployments in the whole game. Every battle felt horrible. Every move, it didn't feel like we were having a freewheeling fun time, on the plains of Terranoth. There was no back and forth fun chaos of that type of dudes on a map game that I think those espionage cards would work with.
Right.
It would be like even Cthulhu Wars. I'm invading you with my 7 units, and you're like, but aha, I have the poisoned water card, and now everyone in the wells dies.
Right.
And it's like, wait, no, your card just killed 17 units on the board? Like,
right.
What?
Yeah.
But I do believe the hidden deployment is brilliant. I think it should be used in more games because it makes it go faster, right? This is a big, epic game that we finished in 2 hours. Literally 2 hours. The setup does take a long time with the random variable board. These guys left me to go get food and made me set it up without them.
One thing I want to talk about is there were something I don't think we mentioned yet, but there were these 3 big superpower type things. Like there's a Leviathan, a steam tank, and a Guardian. And they're expensive to buy and they're big things. But what was, I thought, very interesting about those compared to the espionage cards is when you buy one of them, it's a big, oh my God, Kellen has the Leviathan now. So it's like you're waiting for him to deploy it. And that's so much more interesting than being surprised by a thing.
Yeah, it made me wonder, like, and obviously you mentioned the draft variant, but what if the espionage cards were just like face up, like a array that you could select from? I mean, I have no idea. It's just something that struck me as mitigating the you just got screwed factor.
Yeah, and I think the Leviathan is this giant worm that after everyone passes in a battle, you just say, oh, by the way, I win this battle and get a bunch of victory points. And that feels kind of broken. And it is, but everyone knows that they could have bought it. It was there the whole game. Everyone knows when you have it, and so then every battle you have to be even more careful when you fight me.
And importantly, it's single use as well. So
correct.
Yeah, once it's gone, you know that there's a tension released as the threat's eliminated.
Yeah, but the game overall is very punishing. Punishing is a word I want to use here. Every faction has a super unit that has cool special abilities. If it dies, it's dead. And it can die in a battle. 2 soldier units from someone else can kill your super unit. So Christina lost her super unit, I believe, on turn 2 of 7, never used it for its intended purpose, and that just feels bad. Right. It just feels bad. And I mean, I get that's fine, and it's supposed to be a shorter, tighter affair, but there were just so many moments where I just felt bad while playing this game. Even though I respect and admire a lot of the systems in it, aside from the furry steampunk adventure.
Yeah, I am interested in researching these variants, these ways to mitigate the espionage cards, and giving it another go.
So this game, Clockwork Wars, was the inspiration for our featured topic, as it usually is, because I will be getting rid of my copy of Clockwork Wars. in part because Mark has it, in part because it takes up too much space, and in part because there's just too many other Dudes on a Map games that I'm more excited about playing. Yeah. But before we get to our featured topic, as always, we'd like to read a review on the show. We're getting close to reading all of them, maybe. So if you want to leave us a review, please do so on iTunes. Please do so on Facebook. We really appreciate it. It's the best way you can help the Board Game Barrage podcast. This review comes to us from Miyako789. Best new board game podcast. I don't have to tell you that this is 5 out of 5, but I will. Absolutely a day one download each week. Please don't stop making the show! !
And we won't. Yako.
Yeah.
Miyako?
Is it Miyako?
Miyako.
Oh, you didn't pronounce it right.
Yako?
I heard Yako too.
Uh-oh.
Well, let's run the tape back.
That's right. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be right.
This review comes to us from Yako789. So thank you so much for everyone who writes reviews. It is much appreciated for us. So let us dive right into our featured topic. We want to tell you about games that we have gotten rid of. I have been talking for a while. Neelan, tell us a game you got rid of recently and why.
Why? I think the first game I'm going to talk about is Lowlands. This is a Z-Man Games game that is very much in the Uwe Rosenberg... Uwe? Does that work?
The pre-Tetramino era of Rosenberg game.
Classic.
It's very much in his vein of like farming games. I believe it even says like Uwe Rosenberg seal of quality or something on the front, which would do Nintendo proud. Lowlands had the promise of an interesting sort of almost semi-co-op mechanic to it, in that the players are collectively building this dike, this wall against the waves, and whether or not they contribute to the wall or not, the value of sheep goes up and down. It's a very interesting idea because it introduces a negotiation, potentially cooperation elements to games that don't normally have them. But we found this pretty undercooked in actuality. Actually the rules specifically say no discussion is allowed about who's allowed to help you build the dike, which we thought was a bizarre rule. And it actually almost works counterintuitively. In the games I've played of it, no one ever seemed to quite get when or why they would contribute to the dike and how that would actually help or hurt them. So it just kind of fell flat. The other systems are secondary to the main sort of worker placement system. There are these laborers that you sort of move around to like buff your abilities, but you can't really move them around enough to really make it worthwhile. Nothing about it really quite clicked for me. It's a game that I could see the appeal of because, I mean, it's beautiful and it has these little sort of physical pieces that you actually build the dike with, but just didn't quite work for me. It certainly didn't work nearly as well as Newsfjord or some of the more recent Uwe Rosenberg games that I've played. That's Lowlands, unfortunately.
I liked this one. I don't have it in my collection because you had it in your collection, so now I don't know what to do. But I think that would be my first question to you is what games in your collection are the replacement for it. So for you is Newsfjord, which you also don't have,
Newsfjord,
right?
I don't actually have. Yeah, I mean, for me, I know Feast for Odin isn't quite the right answer, but Feast for Odin is certainly the best game I have in my collection that's in the same vein. Agricola probably the closest.
Agricola.
Agricola.
This is a wide debate, internet.
Oh,
so
the
please
pronunciation?
Don't correct us. Agricola.
But, I mean, to answer that question, like, I would buy Newsfjord in a heartbeat and play that over Lowlands for sure.
Yeah, I like Lowlands, but it's hard to defend it because I do agree with you that the novel aspect of it, which is the semi-co-op, which way is the dam going to go and how much are sheep going to be worth, doesn't really seem to have the tension that you want it to have. And while I do like the farming aspect, if you strip that out, I still think the farming part of the game is interesting. That you have this thing where you're removing pieces from a board and you're unlocking income and stuff like that. I like it. I think that is a solid game, but it's hard to argue that that's enough when you have games like Agricola and Caverna,
right,
the Uwe classics that are filling that same void.
Mark?
I got rid of Key to the City London recently, which I was hoping would be a replacement to Keyflower.
Get out of my house.
One thing I never really loved about Keyflower is the movement aspect of it, and Key to the City London removes that from the game. But what it replaces it with these multicolored sticks that that you're now placing on the hexes, and that you need to place certain colors on a hex to unlock its ability.
They're obviously underground lines.
That's right. That's right. Yes. The red underground line and the black underground line unlocks Big Ben.
Right.
As you would assume. It just felt a little flat. We played a game of it at BarageCon last year, and just wasn't what I was hoping for. It also, I don't know what it was, but it felt like some of the tension of Keyflower was lost in it. And I know that maybe there was an effort to like sand down the meanness of Keyflower, but that's one of the things I like about it. And also, having just played Keeper, which is a game very much along the lines of Keyflower and Key to the City London, and liking that quite a bit, that might be a game that I would get. So yeah, I'm much more inclined now to maybe go with Keeper and give that a couple tries as a Keyflower replacement, or I'll just stick to Keyflower.
This is an interesting one for me because I did quite like Key to the City London, but only because, like you, I didn't like the movement aspect of Keyflower. But it's almost like it takes away that, but it takes away a lot of the things I liked about Keyflower as well. So I almost want the middle ground game that's not quite as stripped down from Keyflower. But given the choice of the two, Keyflower just felt like the richer experience, despite having all those extra trimmings that I didn't quite like.
Key to the City London is also really ugly.
I actually don't agree. I know that you guys were all saying that, but I do think...
I wasn't saying that.
When you said, I feel like you were saying that at the time. Okay, never mind. Kellen was definitely saying that a lot. He was saying it enough for the both of you.
Maybe if it was Key to the City America.
Right, maybe, yeah. But yeah, because the aesthetic is definitely an allusion to underground lines.
But it's more drab.
It is. It's white and colored lines.
But it's 3D. You can have...
Oh, that's true, yeah. You even have a little Big Ben sitting on your map.
Moving on... A game that I got rid of is Raptor. Raptor is a 2-player asymmetric game with cute little figures of a mama dragon,
That's
a mama
accurate.
dinosaur. What's the dinosaurs? Who can say if those are real either? Is a game where one player plays a mama dinosaur with little baby dinosaurs, and the other player plays scientists trying to kill and maim the baby dinosaurs and the mama dinosaur. This game sounds awesome. I love the idea of asymmetric factions. I love all the minis. I love all the artwork. It's a very beautiful game. It uses a mechanic that I have soured on in recent years, which is everyone has a hand of cards numbered 1 through 9 with this simultaneous action selection, and you're trying to guess what number the other player uses. This mechanic is also used in Mission Red Planet, another game that everyone loves and I got rid of because I just didn't understand. So in Raptor, each action has a number and a ability. And if you play the 2 and your opponent plays the 9, the 2, that player gets to use their special ability on the card, but the 9 player gets to do the difference between the 2 cards in actions on the board. So there's a bunch of standard actions you can take for action points. So that means you have a card in your hand, you want to use that ability, but half of the time you're not ever going to get to use that ability because you have to try to guess what card the other person's going to use. And this is a lot of memorization, a lot of, well, what have they played so far? What's in their discard pile? It's just a mechanic I'm not super interested in personally. And if I'm playing a 2-player game, I'm going to be playing Pinata, I'm going to be playing Innovation, I'm going to be playing Battle Line, Hana Mikoji, Lost Cities. The 2-player space in my house is very small, and Raptor did not make the cut.
This is one that I haven't played. I was interested in it, but that's a good argument against it.
It's cute. Kawaii.
Another game that I've gotten rid of recently is Magic Maze. I wanted to talk about this one because this is one that I sort of kind of didn't take any pleasure in getting rid of. It's a game I actually like a lot, but I found I didn't have the opportunity to play it for a very simple reason, in that the game that's basically about a gimmick that is really, really fun to show people to, but a lot of the time I didn't ever have people wanting to repeat play it. I always enjoyed playing it. I always enjoyed showing it to people, but I found it very hard to get anyone else excited about playing it a second time. It's a pretty frustrating mechanic. The basic system for Magic Maze is it's a cooperative game where you're sort of moving through a maze, but each person only has access to one specific action. So, for example, I might be the only player that can move the players north. Mark might be the only player that can move all pieces west, but you cannot talk to each other. There might be an obvious move that you're waiting for Mark to do and he's just not seeing it, so you put this marker in front of him that signals him, do something, we need you to do something, and Mark's like, I don't get it, I don't know what you want me to do, but it ends up being funny the first time you do it, but frustrating. And once you get into the rhythm of it after a couple of games, very easily solvable. It's a very short sort of shelf life for any sort of specific group of players. And I just found that it had run the course with all the people I had showed it to. I still think it's such an interesting, novel idea, but one that I wasn't getting any subsequent joy of bringing out with the people I was playing it with. That's Magic Maze.
This is one I've kept, and I liked introducing it to people who are not necessarily big board gamers. I think they get a kick out of the novelty of the non-communication, bang this little piece in front of somebody to get their attention thing. But I agree that repeated plays don't add too much to it and can get stale. And also, I think it's sort of touts itself as a party game, and it says it can play up to, I don't know, like 8 or something. But really, you never want to play this with more than 4.
You want to play with it exactly 4.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I don't think it plays less or more than 4 particularly well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I like how it solved the quarterbacking issue in co-ops by just saying, I'm cutting out all your tongues and you shall not speak.
As a champion of sort of like interesting game experiences, I would like to sing the praises of, but in practice it wasn't something I felt I needed to keep around. That's Magic Maze.
Next game I got rid of is a game, much like Clockwork Wars, was a sort of graily sort of game to me, a game that I was seeking for a while and finally got my hands on and finally got to play, Chinatown, which has recently been reprinted. Fortunately, I sold it before it got reprinted, so I sold it at a high. But that isn't why I got rid of it. I got rid of it because it's spoken about as being one of the most pure ultimate negotiation games, and that's really sort of what it is. It is only a negotiation game. There's some set collection and all these like trappings, but the way you're doing everything in the game is via negotiation. But in the games we played of it, or the games I played of it, it very quickly devolved into a calculation. It's a game where, you've got Chinatown, which is a board in front of you that is a number of squares, and you're trying to get specific types of businesses, and you're trying to place them all together, which make the businesses more profitable. So there's an aspect of trying to negotiate with other players about the parcels of land they own, because you want to get parcels of land that are grouped together, but also you're negotiating with them for the businesses that they have. Both the acquiring of these parcels of land and the business tiles is done randomly, and then once those are done, then it's up to the players to negotiate to see who gets what, and then place the businesses out and make the money they make for it. So the first round, there was a lot of negotiation because everybody's sort of on equal footing. We don't know, how the board is going to play out, but it very quickly, once things are placed on the board, you can very quickly math out how much a person is going to make from a business. So, Kellen may have 2 restaurant tiles, and I've got the land and the tile that allow him to have his third one. For me, it doesn't mean anything because it's really no use to me at this point, maybe to start building a restaurant. But I know exactly how much Kellen will get from that restaurant tile. I can say, versus a 2-space restaurant, a 3-space restaurant will make this much for the rest of the game. I figure out the numbers and I say, okay, you're going to make $50,000 for this for the rest of the game. Pay me $40,000. And so it really sort of undercuts the negotiation part of it. I think a way it could be solved is to encourage the players to play fast and loose and not do the math. But that's a level of demand or a little level of house ruling that I'm not super excited about. So I got rid of it.
I really like Chinatown. I think I agree with your complaint entirely in the last round and then mostly in the round before that. But I do still feel like there's enough freewheeling and dealing at the beginning because the randomness of what lots you're going to get does make there's some variance to what you could.
I agree, but the curve is definitely a downward curve. The game gets more and more mathy as it goes on, and it's hard to escape that.
Absolutely.
So that is Chinatown.
The last game I wanted to mention that I have gotten rid of is Yamataï. Yamataï is a Days of Wonder release. This is a game I actually still wish I owned because of how beautiful and how pleasant it is. Days of Wonder does a yearly release. This one has beautiful torii gates in it, just one of the prettiest boards I've ever seen. It's very simple. You're moving ships around a board and completing buildings and objectives, special powers, a la 5 Tribes. It's not super well received in the marketplace. It's very simple and it plays in under an hour. But every time I think to what's that hour-long game that I could play that's not going to offend anyone, but we're all going to have fun with, I wish I still had Yamataï.
I wish you did too. I kind of always liked the look of this one. I remember seeing you playing it at the Barrage Con, and like you said, it's just beautiful looking. And
you played it with me at Barrage Con. I don't remember it very well, but I remember it being sort of cutthroat. Was it not the case?
No, maybe that's why I like it. But
Yeah.
it's good. It's just.
Why'd you get rid of it?
Who can say? The changing whims.
Yeah, sure.
I examine the castle and just sort of say, "Be gone."
Right.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it for our featured topic on games that have left our collection recently. Let us move on to a old favorite, which is things that we're looking forward to in the world of board gaming. Mark?
I'm looking forward to yet another Strategicon coming up, and you know what that means? Another math trade. And I'll be able to report yet another litany of trades. Actually, if you want to know what trades I make, join the Discord, because I'll be definitely talking about it there on our trading channel.
And I think they might actually give us press badges.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We've finally become professionals.
TM
for Strategicon.
So the thing I'm looking forward to is the second wave of Lords of Hellas content is arriving apparently in May. So that's exciting because I've been looking for a good excuse to break Lords of Hellas out again. Like we mentioned this a few episodes back, that it's a game I'm itching to get back to the table, and this feels as good a reason as any. Also pretty exciting if you're one of the backers that was only getting all of your content. Now you're now going to be receiving your base game and all the content for Lords of Hellas. So that's probably pretty exciting for a lot of backers out there as well. I'm looking forward to that.
The thing that I'm most looking forward to is a little change to the Board Game Barrage podcast.
What?
We're getting rid of Mark.
Occasionally, we're going to be adding a fourth chair to the Board Game Barrage podcast, which is a guest host. And before you panic and freak out, we're not super interested in doing interviews with people. We want to throw people into the fray and start arguing with them. So we're starting to reach out to some other personalities in the board gaming world, and we're excited to get some other voices on the air. If you have any suggestions or people you want us to reach out to, please join us in the Discord to discuss at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. All right, so that'll do it for this episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. You can find us anywhere you want to at boardgamebarrage.com. You can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com, and please do. We love reading your emails. There's been some very kind things said to us. If you want to chit-chat, boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're everywhere you want to be.
I'm going to sort of make another mention of sending in your reader questions. We would like to read your questions on a future episode, so please send them in. We'll read them out on the show and answer them as best as we can.
As always, thank you to Heart Society Music for letting us use their fantastic song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. You can find them at heartsocietymusic.com. Thanks.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just go as a...
But a very good... normally, when you stop me,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I groan a little.
Sure.
I try not to audibly groan because
Right.
that would be captured, in the computer.
Yeah, right.
But
Time.
it's with my eyes.
Yeah, I see it every time. But then I speak the words of wisdom that I speak, and then I see the recognition in your eyes that, yes, Mark was right to stop me because I was doing something stupid.
Are you
And
even...
Thank God he saved me from my own idiocy.
Did you... Mark,
Yes, sir.
be classy
Okay.
for 1 minute. This interlude, I said, I prefaced it,
Yeah.
Mark. I said this was a good one.
Yeah, you said something along the lines of like, every other time you're an idiot for stopping me. This one time.
Mark,
Okay.
is this what you're like without caffeine in your bloodstream?
That's right. Blame it on Nealon.
Yeah, it's my fault.
Okay. So I played...
There is also a espionage deck, which is a deck of 20 to 30 you cards. I've already used my you,
Yeah.
so I don't know. A deck of 20 to 30 screw you cards that would not be out of place. We need more.
Why is this not letting me go down anymore? There we go. Nope. That's not
They always stop letting you go down.
Yep.
Risky. It's risky talk.
It seemed
Barrage After Dark.
It seemed too easy.
It was too easy. I can confirm that for you.
This episode's going to be silly.